This is CBS.
Minneapolis Mayor Don Fraser wants to raise city property taxes to pay for a new convention center. Some emotional testimony today from Scott County Attorney Kathleen Morris at the Morris Commission hearings in St. Paul. The final moments of Japan Airlines Flight 123 are becoming clearer as investigators study tapes from the flight recorder. And traces of marijuana has shown up in the urine of several St. Paul police officers. Those stories and more coming up next on the Noon Report.
Bedtime can be a welcome time with the help of this little fellow, Musical Glowworm. It just takes a gentle squeeze to turn Musical Glowworm into a friendly nightlight. And when you press his buttons, he plays a sweet lullaby so kids can sleep tight. For daytime play, it's fun to dress and undress Musical Glowworm in his nightshirt. And he's machine washable, too. Who has a goodnight friend that's music to a mother's ears? Hasbro has.
How would you like to win this Lincoln Town Car worth over $24,000? You could by entering the Win a Lincoln sweepstakes at Mills Fleet Farm. It's a chance of a lifetime to win one of 4 Lincoln Town Cars from Fleet Farm, Lee Jeans, and Mills Motor of Brainerd, Minnesota. Just stop at your nearest Mills Fleet Farm, try on a pair of Lee Jeans, and ask for an entry form. No purchase is necessary. And be sure to slip into the famous fit of sale price the Ultra Courts, and you just might be sliding yourself behind the wheel of a Lincoln. Now at Mills Fleet Farm.
Hi, I'm Bob Eubanks. You never know what those unpredictable newlyweds will say next. She said your neighborhood has more uphills.
How you know where we live? At the bottom of the hill from the...
Jeez, it doesn't matter. Either way you go, it's up, it's down, it's same
Well, we're
thing.
at the top of it, so you gotta go down
We're
here.
at the bottom of the hill. We have to go up one.
you
Go up PCH. We're going uphill.
That's north or south.
Jeez, that's uphill.
The Newlywed Game, weekdays at 3 on Channel 4. Serving and informing the Twin Cities for 4 decades. This is WCCO Television, Minneapolis, St. Paul. And now, Bill Carlson, Debbie Ely, and Bud Kraehling bring you Channel 4's Noon Report.
Good afternoon, everyone. If you live in Minneapolis, get ready to grab your wallet. You may be asked to pay higher property taxes to pay for a new downtown convention center. Mayor Fraser outlined his 1986 budget this morning, but Mark Watts is here to tell us that not everybody is happy about paying property taxes that are higher. Now, who would be paying these property taxes?
Well, those affected the most would be those owning average above price homes or below average price homes. An example, an owner of a $150,000 home would pay about $12 more a year. Someone owning a home of about $40,000 would pay about $12 a year. Councilmember Walter Dietzick, very frustrated. He says that there are too many people, too many elderly people in the community on fixed incomes and who just can't afford another cost increase.
Mm-hmm. Now, how much money would they raise with all of this?
Well, it's about $6 million, which is to be raised over the next year. It's a $2.2 mil increase, and by the way, the mayor said this is the first property tax he has asked for in his 6 years as mayor. He says the tax increases are necessary because the federal government simply has not provided funding assistance financially for the cities, and the burden now must fall on the cities. Of course, all the money won't be used for the convention center, but many of them say the money's already there to pay for the convention center. They pointed out the fact that $5 to $7 million are derived every year from tax revenue, from refinancing the tax increment bonds and also general obligation bonds.
Now, he said not all of this will be used to pay for the convention center. What else will it be used for?
Well, he's also asking for some new fire stations, one to be built in the Lake Calhoun, Lake of the Isles area where the response time has been very slow. They need another fire station in that area. Also, a $35 million program to aid in the prevention and further educate people in AIDS. Also, no raises for city employees this year.
You mentioned Walt Dietzick was not too happy with the property tax increase. What about the other reaction from the council?
Just about everyone we talked to was opposed to it. Councilmember Steve Kramer was the one person I talked to. Of course, he's a DFL colleague. Mayor Fraser. Schultz said Councilmember Charlie Hoyt, who was not even running again for re-election, was very upset. She simply thinks the taxes are some of the highest, they are the highest in the metropolitan area, and no more increases are necessary.
From here, where does it go?
Well, it goes up for, it goes back to the Ways and Means Committee and back up for approval by the full City Council next Friday. After that, it goes back to a committee where it will get chopped up, and then each element, each proposal comes before the board again for approval.
Lots of hearings.
Lots of
Okay,
hearings.
thanks, Mark. John Reardon made his first court appearance in Otter Tail County District Court this morning. Reardon is charged with murdering and sexually abusing his 13-year-old daughter, Sarah Ann. She disappeared last May, and her body was found 6 weeks later. Police say Reardon confessed to the killing under questioning, but now Reardon says he has doubts about whether he could have done such a thing. 4 St. Paul police officers show signs of using marijuana. That is the finding of voluntary drug tests conducted within the department last week. The tests were instigated after another officer was arrested and charged with possession of cocaine. Officials say the tests turned up no evidence of others using cocaine, but the 4 officers suspected of using pot will be referred to the department's Troubled Employees Program for counseling. The Morris Commission is wrapping up its testimony in St. Paul this week. Today, Kathleen Morris broke down while defending her actions in the Scott County child sex abuse cases. Pat Kessler is at the State Office building with an update. Hi, Pat.
Hi, Deborah. This is the 13th day of testimony. Today, Kathleen Morris took the stand, and she and her attorney, Stephen Doyle, began a point-by-point rebuttal of all the charges against her, beginning with the way the cases were handled and continuing with her denying many charges that she destroyed or suppressed evidence and subjected children to dozens of unneeded investigative interviews. In sometimes emotional testimony today, Morris conceded that something went wrong in the cases. She said in retrospect she wouldn't have allowed a 60-day deadline for trying those cases to expire, as was done. And she says she demanded too much of her investigators and staff, and she said a lot of people were hurt, and she regrets that very much.
With you to go to law school. I guess that I believed that one of the things we had to do was to try to protect everybody. That can't be done.
As it related to this case, what did you do along those lines?
Well, I guess I demanded that they keep working when they were tired. Everybody kept working.
Morris is also charged with suppressing evidence by throwing away her 1984 appointment calendar. She admits throwing it away, says she didn't know that it was going to be important for the case. It was something she always did. And she said it was not a good record of her activities anyway. She also said today she often saw the children, not just for investigative interviews, but often just to talk and play. Finally, she denies asking Scott County residents to check up on their neighbors and says she didn't know anything about people getting wired to talk to convicted child abusers. And she says it didn't occur to her that the judges would be upset when she sequestered child witnesses before the trials began. She said that there was a safety issue here. Now, Debbie, finally, what's happening is that Morris is on the stand. She says, or pardon me, her attorney says this may be the final witness that he calls. She may be the last one to testify. We could wrap things up here today, possibly tomorrow, when the defense and the prosecution present their closing statements.
What about rebuttal witnesses? Anything like that?
At this point, we are told there will be no more witnesses, no more rebuttal witnesses. Kathleen Morris is here in her own defense on the stand, and we are told that she would be the last witness. Now, anything can happen, of course. The commission members still have to question Kathleen Morris themselves, but at this point, it looks like it could wrap up, maybe not today, but probably by tomorrow.
Quickly, how soon could the commission have a decision?
A decision is expected in several weeks. There are volumes of testimony, not only for the last 2 years of the cases, but also from the commission itself, so it's probably going to take a couple, 3 weeks before any decision is made and then announced.
Pat, thank you very much. Sources in China report that 300 people drowned in a boat accident in the Harbin area. The victims were riding on a ferry boat when a fist fight broke out. The crowd rushed to one side of the boat to watch the fight, and the boat capsized. Only a few managed to swim to shore. A survivor of the Japan Airlines Flight 123 crash says that some of the passengers survived the impact but died before rescuers could reach the remote side of the crash. And the final moments of that tragic crash included frantic attempts by the pilot to control the damaged aircraft, along with at least one passenger writing a farewell message to his family. Wyatt Andrews has more.
Japanese news reports quoting the voice recordings from the 747's cockpit depict a flight crew unsure of why it could not control the plane. The crew apparently tried to use engine power alone to coax the plane to the right or left. Broadcast reports used a helicopter to retrace the plane's erratic flight path, showing the mountains the pilot flew over as he fought for control. 30 minutes before the crash, the pilot thought he had lost all normal means to steer or to climb. The hydraulic pressure is falling, he said. Then, the hydraulic systems are all out. Then it seems the pilot used his engines to steer. Turn right, he said, 12 minutes before impact. More power. Turn left, he says again, increase power. The last recording, 43 seconds before the crash, says, nose up, nose up. While the captain's voice reportedly exhibits professional calm, the passengers riding the swerving plane felt terror. A farewell note from passenger Hirotsugu Kawaguchi to his family was found in his clothes. The plane is rolling around and descending rapidly, he wrote. Kawaguchi knew he was writing his will. Be good to each other, he wrote to his children. Work hard and help your mother. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News, Tokyo.
There is more trouble today in Lebanon. 2 car bombs went off 30 minutes apart. At least 26 people have been reported killed. More than 70 others were wounded. This latest incident happened in a mostly Muslim section of West Beirut, and there is speculation that the blasts are in retaliation for 2 similar bombings last week. Those blasts killed more than 50. The bombing of a ship has raised tensions between France and New Zealand. Last month, a ship belonging to the environmental group called Greenpeace was blown up in a New Zealand harbor. The ship had been used in protests against French nuclear tests, and there have been allegations that French spies were behind the bombing. Today, New Zealand's Prime Minister said his country will sue France if its government is found to have been involved. Meanwhile, Greenpeace will continue its protests. David Andelman reports.
A new Greenpeace flagship is en route to the French nuclear test areas in the South Pacific, replacing the Rainbow Warrior. Its bombing in Auckland Harbor in New Zealand last month, causing the death of 1 passenger, is now threatening to sink the French government that's alleged to have been behind it. The French press is already speculating on Watergate overtones, wondering how far up the French ladder of power knowledge of the affair might have penetrated.
If the French government were involved in the sinking of our ship, certainly the president is responsible.
A French couple in jail and charged with murder in Auckland, and 4 others being sought by Interpol, are all alleged to work for the French CIA, which in turn was said to be trying to discourage Greenpeace from monitoring and protesting the French nuclear weapons tests in the South Pacific. President Mitterrand, deeply embarrassed, has named Bernard Tricot, a top advisor to the late Charles de Gaulle, to head a blue ribbon inquiry and demanded a preliminary report by midweek. Few believe the Greenpeace affair will be enough to sink the French government itself, but on the line may be the jobs of some top officials, including the Minister of Defense, not to mention the image of France's bumbling spies. David Andelman, CBS News, Paris.
Still to come on the Noon Report, we'll take you to Marrakesh, Morocco, where they're bending over backwards to attract tourists.
Curtis Mathis wants you to hear what you're missing without Curtis Mathis Stereo TV. Half the sound. Curtis Mathis has a complete line of new stereo TVs, consoles, big screens, and components, all unlike anything you've ever heard. But there's no way to show you that on your old TV, so come listen to the only stereo TV backed by an exclusive 4-year warranty. Curtis Mathis Stereo TV. She's great.
$39. Right now, soft contact lenses are just $39 at the optical department at Sears.
Kellogg's Nutri-Grain.
This is dedicated to the ones we love.
Okay, I know his swing has lost some of its zinc, but to me, he's still pretty nifty. So no morning goes by without his Nutri-Grain cereal. Nutri-Grain has no sugar added, no preservatives or cholesterol. It's full of the natural whole grain that's so good for him. And he loves that special Nutri-Grain taste, almost as much as I love him.
Nutri-Grain from Kellogg's.
Dedicated to the ones we love.
That'll be $7, sir.
Come on, let's make it 9. Volunteer to pay extra?
Only $2.
Let's give him 3.
Happens every day with long distance, but U.S. Telecom can save you more than MCI and Sprint and up to 40% more than AT&T. Anytime, anywhere, to any other state with no fees or minimums. Call U.S. Telecom, 1-800-531-1985.
$12. Okay, 13, but that's my final offer.
U.S. Telecom, the right price.
Wide receiver Anthony Carter could start practicing with the Minnesota Vikings sometime this week. Carter, one of the premier players in the USFL, has accepted a new contract to come over to the NFL, pending his clearing waivers. The Vikings will pay Carter more than $2 million over 5 years, and Carter says he looks forward to wearing the purple. Jubilation is not the order of the day for the Minnesota Twins, however. They dropped another game to Seattle yesterday at the Metrodome. The score was 7-2. Frank Viola was the losing pitcher. The Twins move over to Milwaukee. They take on the Brewers tonight at 7:35. What's left of Hurricane Danny is expected to move into the Atlantic today. Among the storm's final blasts, a tornado that tore through the town of Spartanburg, South Carolina yesterday. The twister damaged 42 mobile homes and injured 35 people. At the same time, rain inundated the states of Virginia, North Carolina, and Maryland. We were talking ahead of time, Bud. It's high time some of those states got a little bit of rain. I don't know, are they getting a lot of flooding now?
Well, there's been some flooding along the Roanoke River in North Carolina, but been very dry along the eastern seaboard over the last, well, through the summer. In fact, water rationing in New York City, but now they are getting some rain. But most of that rain has moved offshore, off from northern Florida up to the southern part of New England, flooding on the Roanoke River in North Carolina. And Ocean City, Maryland, 6 inches of rain since last night. And we've had some drizzle in northeastern Minnesota through the morning, drizzle principally at Duluth, and an increase in cloudiness in northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, sort of north of the jet stream. And the clouds have pretty well taken over the state of Minnesota, but there is some sunshine right along the Minnesota-Iowa border. In fact, the last hour it's been partly cloudy at Rochester, where the temperature is at 58 degrees. So it looks like we're going to stay cloudy through the afternoon as clouds come to us from the northern part of the state. Our forecast for the Twin Cities of cloudy with a chance of a brief sprinkle or two. Afternoon temperature low to mid-60s and clearing and cool tonight. Coldest temperatures this morning in Colorado, heaviest rain in Kansas, and that part of our weather summary later in our noon report.
Pope John Paul's trip to Africa is over. His last stop was the nation of Kenya, where the pontiff said his goodbyes this morning. While in Africa, Pope John Paul condemned South Africa's racial policies and issued a plea for aid to famine victims. The pontiff is now in Morocco, where he'll meet this afternoon with King Hassan. The two leaders will discuss Catholic-Muslim relations. John Paul is not the only tourist to take to the road to Morocco. The nation has launched all-out efforts to attract Western tourists. But as Larry Pintock reports, some of the attractions might surprise you.
Marrakesh, for centuries a meeting place for traders who plied the ancient caravan routes. In the 60s, a generation of hippies was drawn to this oasis, seeking the simple life. Today's traveler will find a city locked in the single-minded pursuit of the tourist buck. And the traders of Marrakesh will do just about anything to get it. Torture monkeys, spit petrol, or put on the worst exhibition of boxing you've ever seen. We won't show you the guy who sticks needles through his cheeks and razor blades in his nose. It's all done for the camera, of course. They demand money for each shot. Nobody paid the water bearer, so he's hiding. There's one thing about Marrakesh that hasn't changed. The merchant spirit is still alive. The antiques are genuine, made just last week. The clash of cultures doesn't seem to bother the locals. They're making too much money from it to complain. And there's a new generation waiting in the wings to lift your wallet if you don't take care. Larry Pintock, CBS News, Marrakesh.
There's so much for your eyes at the optical department at Sears during our Spectacle Spectacular. Fantastic savings on fashion and designer eyewear. We'll make you look good at prices that'll make you feel good. Come in and look us over.
There's more for your life
at the optical department
at Sears.
Every stylish frame in our entire regular stock now half price when you buy prescription lenses. The optical department at Sears.
Our time is really important to us.
We both work, and with school, music lessons, gymnastics, scouts.
Well, time is at a premium. And that's why we go to Jonathan Dental.
You see, Jonathan Dental offices are open weekends and evenings, so we don't have to change our schedule to meet theirs.
And the quality of care we receive makes us feel like they really are the caring professionals.
Jonathan Dental, it just makes sense.
Check the yellow pages for the Jonathan Dental office nearest you.
Stand by, please.
Okay, I'm ready.
Action!
All familiar words in the Hollywood movie-making business. And now they're being echoed right here in Minnesota. From the production of major motion pictures to music videos, TV specials, and commercials, our local film and video industry is thriving and making Hollywood sit up and take notice. You will too, as WCCO-TV presents Minnesota Shorts, Wednesday night at 7, here on Channel 4.
The White House is listening to the concerns of small business proprietors, and a special meeting will be held September 17th at the Radisson South in Bloomington. Small business people will be allowed to voice their complaints to federal officials. And joining us on the Noon Report today is Ralph Blackman. He is the Associate Director of the White House Conference on Small Business, a long title.
Nice to be here.
But we talk about small business. How small are we talking?
Well, for instance, here in Minnesota, 89% of the businesses located here have less than 20 employees. So while small for our purposes considers businesses with up to about 500, most small businesses in this country are very, very small.
Now, you have held 2 meetings so far, 2 of these sessions like You're going to be holding in Bloomington. What have you gotten out of them so far?
Well, we've gotten some very interesting ideas about the amount of paperwork and regulations that small businesses have to comply with in dealing with the federal government. We've talked about access to capital and the financing that small businesses need to be successful. We will talk about procurement. We will talk about international trade. We will talk about the needs of women and minorities that are entering the business ownership field faster than the normal white male-owned businesses. And we expect to hear some good things from people.
Well, pardon my pessimism, but do you ever do anything with all of this that you get out of this?
Yes, we do. There was a 1980 conference held in Washington of the 60 recommendations that were presented to the president at that time. 38 of those have been acted upon. Of the top 15, 11 have been acted upon. So it has gotten some widespread interest by the part of members of Congress and this administration.
When a lot of us think of the Small Business Administration, we think of those loans, those dirt cheap loans that got a lot of businesses started. Now, you're not making so many of those anymore.
That's correct. Although the figures that are put out in Washington say that in reality, only about 0.5% of businesses in this country ever got Small Business Administration loans. We are looking for much more activism on the part of the private sector to provide the financing and the capital needed for small business.
A la Reagan's philosophy of have the private sector
Absolutely
subsidize
true.
it. Yeah. Okay, Ralph Blackman, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here.
Up next on the Noon Report, the autumnal weather story from Bud Kraehling. Stay with us.
Eggo waffles, I'm starving. You're the best, Mom.
Oh, not so fast. This isn't a typical Eggo. This is a Nutri-Grain waffle. It's for grown-ups.
I'm grown up.
It's for people old enough to appreciate a natural whole grain taste.
I can appreciate that. Mom, let go my Eggo.
Oh, if you're old enough to eat them, guess what? You're old enough to make them.
Nutri-Grain waffles. No preservatives or added sugar. Just great whole grain taste. New from Eggo.
How can people with arthritis live a more comfortable life?
Take your arthritis to a doctor and then discover Ascriptin, the brand doctors recommend most for flare-ups of minor arthritis pain and stiffness. Only Ascriptin contains aspirin plus Maalox.
That's right. Aspirin to relieve your pain for hours, plus Maalox to comfort your stomach, equals Ascriptin, the stomach comfort aspirin.
Live a more comfortable life. Discover Ascriptin, the stomach comfort aspirin.
I don't know if you folks have been outside yet today, but it's a little nippy.
I assume a number of our viewers have been outside. It's 58 now, present temperature.
It's throw an overcoat on today.
Oh, I brought my raincoat with me, and I wore it for warmth today. I want to put a fall warbler at your TV feeder right now.
Well, now, what does this warbler look like?
This is the Tennessee warbler. Has a bright greenish back and has that very distinctive eye bar. It's only 4 1/4 inches long, so you have to really look in a hurry. That's the Tennessee. You'll find these in the Roberts Bird Sanctuary along Lake Erie.
What kind of food do they like?
Oh, they bugs and things like that.
Okay.
Mostly, I think. Well, the Tennessee warblers are here, and it's cloudy in the metro area. Temperature at 58 degrees, humidity at 64%. The wind is from the northwest at 12 miles an hour, and the pressure is rising from 30.17. So it's cloudy, temperature at 58 in the metro area. Temperatures this morning were in the range of 40s and 50s, 52 minimum in the Twin Cities. But you might like to know that overnight the minimum temperature at Phoenix was 85 degrees. The cool spot this morning in Gunnison, Colorado, that temperature was 34. And temperatures for the afternoon, well, Portland will be in the 70s today. There's a little cold front in the Pacific Northwest, a couple of showers ahead of that. Los Angeles at 80, and now the warm weather will be from Texas along the Gulf, over 100 at Austin, 91 at Miami, 77 at Detroit, and there's the remnant of Hurricane Danny in the low-pressure center off the Virginia coast at the moment. The heaviest rain has been from Oklahoma, Kansas, up through parts of Illinois, Kansas City, 2 inches of rain. The tropical jet bringing some precipitation out through the southwest, and there are some dotted thunderstorms in the central Gulf. Here's our forecast for the metro area for the afternoon, and that will be for mostly cloudy. A brief sprinkle is possible with the afternoon temperature at 64. Winds from the northwest 10 to 15, but clearing and cool tonight at 50 degrees, and winds light and variable. And the forecast for tomorrow, well, we'll warm up a little bit and be partly cloudy, sunshine bringing us up to about 74 degrees for tomorrow.
Well, I am fresh out of bugs, but if those little warblers would settle on some wheat chick feed, maybe I could help them out.
They might try. Sure.
Well, I hope so. Well, finally today, one of the stories that we'll be watching is the ongoing strike in Austin against the Hormel Company. It is day 3 of the walkout by 1,500 meat packers, and so far things have been rather peaceful. There is no movement on the issues, though the two sides might, and we say might, meet tomorrow. Members of local P9 are in the Twin Cities today. They're passing out leaflets on the strike, and we'll have more on this story tonight on our 5, 6, and 10 p.m. reports. We hope you'll join us then. In the meantime, have a good afternoon.
A Channel 4 editorial on living wills with Ron Handberg.
Minnesotans have no legal right to die. We think they should. No, this is not suicide, not euthanasia, not the taking of life, but a conscious, well-informed decision to end life with dignity by refusing medical treatment when death is imminent. 35 states and the District of Columbia have laws that authorize living wills. They're permitted in Iowa and Wisconsin, but not in Minnesota. Such laws allow us to plan for the day we might be hopelessly ill with no chance for recovery. At that point, our choices are to artificially prolong the dying process or reject mechanical support systems and die naturally in maximum comfort and freedom from pain. We think each individual should have the option of making that choice while still healthy and alert. A living will makes that possible. It puts the legal responsibility where it belongs, in the hands of the person whose life is at stake. A living will is a clear statement informing family, lawyer, and doctor of your personal wishes. It's easily changed so long as you're able to communicate. It lifts the burden of decision from loved ones. It permits the doctor to follow your instructions without fear of liability. Best of all, it offers peace of mind. This is not meddling in matters of life and death. The living will applies only in the final days of an irreversible illness. It simply allows us to say, keep me alive no matter what, or let me die without a lot of medical heroics. It's the ultimate right, the right to die when our time has come, as we see fit. I'm Ron Handberg.
We offer equal